Have you ever watched someone walk through chaos, criticism, failure, betrayal, and wondered how they stay so calm? How do they make it look like nothing touches them? Hello, I've been dead for over 55 years. I was created by artificial intelligence to teach you about emotional mastery and mental resilience. I'm not the real man. I'm a replica, built from every speech, every letter, every recorded word left behind. Today, I'll show you how to control your emotional responses, use your purpose as armor, reprogram your thinking through auto-suggestion, and turn adversity into advantage. If you want to learn more about mastering your own mind, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Let me give you some context on why I understand this topic so well. I grew up in a one-room cabin in Wise County, Virginia. We had nothing. My mother died when I was 9. The people around me expected me to amount to nothing, and honestly, I was heading that direction. Then my father married Martha, and she looked at me and saw something different. She didn't see a wild, hopeless boy. She saw potential. That was my first real lesson. Someone else's perception of you doesn't have to become your reality. Years later, in 1908, Andrew Carnegie gave me an assignment that changed everything. He asked me to interview over 500 of the most successful people in America and find the common thread behind their achievements. I spent the next 2 decades sitting across from people like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Theodore Roosevelt. Here's what surprised me. None of them were immune to hardship. They'd been broke, humiliated, publicly attacked. But they all shared one thing. They had trained their minds to choose how they responded instead of just reacting. This wasn't about being cold or pretending pain doesn't exist. It was about discipline, and I learned that lesson personally too, through bankruptcy, public attacks, and loss. So what I'm about to share comes from both research and hard experience. Let me be honest with you right away. The idea that nothing affects you is nonsense. Everything affects you. Pain is real. Loss is real. Criticism stings. Anyone who tells you they feel nothing is either lying or they've disconnected from their own humanity. But here's the distinction most people miss. Acting as if nothing affects you is not about being numb. It's about training yourself to choose your response instead of letting your circumstances choose it for you. In my book, Think and Grow Rich, I wrote extensively about self-discipline, the ability to control your own thoughts. That is where all personal power begins. Not in money, not in status, in the mind. The people who look unshakable have simply practiced redirecting their mental energy so many times that it becomes second nature. Think about Thomas Edison. In 1914, his laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey caught fire. Years of work, prototypes, records, gone in one night. And reportedly, he turned to his son and told him to go get his mother, because she'd never see a fire like this again. Within weeks, he was rebuilding. He wasn't pretending it didn't hurt. He was choosing where to aim his attention. That's the difference. Now, how do you actually get to that point? It starts with something I call your definite major purpose. This is the single, overriding goal that organizes everything you think and do. When you have a purpose, that big, smaller disruptions lose their grip on you. Criticism, setbacks, embarrassment, they become background noise against the signal of what you're actually building. Think of it this way. A person without a clear purpose is like a ship without a rudder. Every wave pushes them somewhere new. Every insult knocks them off course. Every failure sends them spinning. But a person who knows exactly where they're headed, they hold course. The waves still hit, but the direction doesn't change. During my research with Andrew Carnegie, I noticed something consistent. Nearly every successful person I interviewed had a singular driving obsession. It made them almost indifferent to side conflicts. They weren't trying to be tough. They were just too focused to be distracted. So here's what I want you to do. Write down your definite major purpose. Be specific. Read it every morning when you wake up and every night before you sleep. And when something hits you emotionally, an insult, a setback, a disappointment, measure it against that purpose. Ask yourself one question. Does this actually threaten what I'm building, or is it just uncomfortable? 9 times out of 10, it's just uncomfortable. And discomfort is not a reason to lose your composure. The next piece is autosuggestion. Let me explain this in simple terms. Autosuggestion is the practice of feeding your subconscious mind specific thoughts over and over until those thoughts become your default programming. Most people don't realize that their emotional reactions are just habits. You weren't born panicking at criticism. You weren't born falling apart when things go wrong. You learned those responses from your parents, your environment, the people you grew up around. And because you learned them, you can replace them. In the book Think and Grow Rich, I dedicated an entire chapter to this principle. The core idea is straightforward. Any thought you repeatedly pass to your subconscious mind with emotion and conviction is eventually accepted as truth. Your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It simply accepts what you feed it and acts accordingly. So if you spend years telling yourself through your inner dialogue that you're easily hurt, that the world is against you, that people's opinions define your worth, your subconscious will make that your reality. But if you deliberately replace those thoughts with something better, your subconscious will accept that instead. Here's the practical step. Create a short personal statement about how you handle adversity. Something like, I am in complete control of my emotional responses. I observe what happens around me and I choose how I react. Say it out loud every day, not as empty words, with genuine feeling behind it. Emotion is the language your subconscious understands. Without it, the words are just noise. Let's talk about criticism specifically, because this is where most people fall apart. Someone questions your ability, your character, your decisions, and suddenly you're consumed. You can't sleep. You rehearse arguments in your head. You waste days, sometimes weeks, fighting battles that exist only in your own mind. I want you to start looking at criticism differently. It falls into two categories. First, criticism that has some truth in it. This is free feedback. The person may have delivered it poorly, but if there's something useful in what they said, take it, improve. They just did you a favor whether they intended to or not. Second, criticism with no truth in it at all. This tells you nothing about yourself and everything about the person who said it. Let it pass. It has no weight unless you pick it up and carry it. I experienced this personally. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, I faced public attacks, accusations, and professional setbacks. The temptation was always to fight back, to defend myself, to argue, to set the record straight. But I watched other people do that, and I noticed something. The ones who spent their energy arguing with critics never built anything lasting. They were too busy fighting yesterday's battle to focus on tomorrow's opportunity. Remember this, every minute you spend reacting emotionally to someone else's opinion is a minute stolen from your own purpose. There's a concept I explored in my book, Outwitting the Devil, that I call cosmic habit force. The idea is that nature enforces patterns. Whatever you do repeatedly becomes fixed, becomes automatic. This applies to physical habits, and it applies equally to emotional ones. If you practice reacting with panic every time something goes wrong, panic becomes your wired-in response. If you practice outrage, outrage becomes your default. But if you practice pausing, assessing, and responding with intention, that becomes your default instead. The entire gap between something happening to you and how you respond is where your power lives. Most people have no gap at all. Something happens and they react instantly. Anger, fear, defensiveness. The goal is to widen that gap, even by a few seconds. Here's a method that works. The next time something upsets you, force yourself to wait. Don't respond for at least 1 hour. During that hour, write down 3 things: what happened, what your gut emotional reaction is, and what a calm, purpose-driven response would look like. Over time, you won't need the full hour. The pause will shrink, but the habit of pausing will remain. The last point is one of the most important principles I ever discovered. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. I wrote about this in the book, Think and Grow Rich, and I stand by it completely. Now, this is not cheerful optimism. I'm not telling you to smile when bad things happen. I'm telling you to look at every bad situation and ask one question: what can I use here? When you train yourself to search for the opportunity inside the problem, something remarkable happens. The problem loses most of its emotional weight. You shift from feeling like a victim to thinking like a strategist. The event itself doesn't change. What changes is the meaning you assign to it, and that meaning determines your emotional state. The person who acts as if nothing affects them is really just the person who has gotten very fast at finding the useful element inside painful experiences. They don't ignore the pain, they just refuse to stop there. So let me bring this together. Acting as if nothing affects you is not about being cold. It's not about pretending. It's about having a purpose so clear that distractions can't compete with it. It's about building habits of thought so strong that calm becomes your natural state. And it's about training yourself to find the advantage hiding inside every setback. This is a skill, not a personality trait. You are not born with it. You build it, and you build it daily. The person who controls their own mind has no need to control anything else. And the world will stand there wondering how nothing ever seems to touch them. If this helped you, please subscribe and share this video with someone who needs to hear it.